know me, I am the middle school pastor here, which means I work alongside Freddie. Freddie's the high school pastor, I'm the middle school pastor. You can think of me as being just like him, only much shorter, and I would argue much more attractive. We are, and in case you don't know, we do basically the same thing. So middle school shares the exact same theme each month. So you guys are working through a series called The Portrait, and so is middle school. So as we go through these series, we're kind of doing so at the same time and talking about the same things. So last week, my group, middle school, talked about what creation was and how God created everything, and just like you guys did last week. And so as we look at what the portrait is, and using this idea of the portrait and a picture and how pictures tell stories, and how pictures are a way to communicate, and pictures are a way of just telling a story. You can look at a picture and surmise something. You can be like, well, I can kind of guess that this is what's going on in the picture. And so we're using that to look at the overall story of the Bible. This big fancy word called a meta-narrative that I'm sure Freddie's probably tossed out. This meta-narrative, the story that all the stories are telling. So the Bible is filled with a bunch of stories that most of us are familiar with. Daniel and the lion's den, Noah and the ark, Jonah and the whale, Moses and the Ten Commandments, all the stuff that's been in movies, right? And all the stuff that you kind of know and you read a book about when you were 4 and it had the really thick pages that you bite on and stuff. And those are the kind of stories that are in the Bible. But those stories tell a giant story of God trying to communicate to us. And that's what we're talking about when we do the portrait. As we talk about this meta-narrative, the story that all the stories tell. And so, if you look at Harry Potter and what he went through, Harry Potter does lots of things across 7 books, 8 books, across 8. Does anybody actually know? Across 7 books. I'm the only one that's read the 8. It's incredible. It's very short. Across 7 books, there are lots of things that happen. But there's one main story, one main theme that carries it all. And so you can see that all these stories build up to tell one giant story. And so the Bible's the same way. The Bible has this overarching theme of God's love, of God, of the overall story of God reaching out to rescue us. And so tonight, or actually last week, I guess you guys talked about creation. And so for my group, I actually asked for the audio of last week so that I could hear it and kind of know where Freddie went. But the guy that normally does it didn't get it to me. His name's Ethan, so if you see him, he's not here, he's on vacation this week. But when you see him next week, does everybody know Ethan? Then can you guys just punch him in the stomach? Just be like, oh! And then, if he bends over, take his head and do the thing where you meet my knee kind of thing. Anyway. So, God creates everything. God creates everything in existence. And it's all perfect. And so you guys probably talked about that last week, that He did that God created everything. In middle school, we talked about how that should impact our interactions, how that should impact our view of ourselves, and how that should impact our view of others. Because if I'm God's perfect creation, then I need to treat myself like that. I need to think of myself like that. And if you are God's perfect creation, then that should impact my interactions with you, and I need to see you as God's perfect creation, and see you as God created you, and how God loves you. And there's basically questions we're trying to answer as we define what Christianity is. This worldview that is Christianity, it answers several questions that any worldview has to answer. And so we've answered so far, who are we? Where are we? And tonight we're going to talk about what is wrong and who we are. Well, we belong to God. We are God's. And then we live in God's creation. And tonight we're going to talk about we have all sinned and are therefore no longer in perfect relationship with God. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever had a relationship that's gone sour. It's like, oh man, it kind of gets awkward at first. My brother and I, we grew up together. So obviously he's 2 years older than me. And we would have to, hang out because he's 2 years older than me. We played a lot together and did all this stuff. But we would go on road trips. And we lived for a long time, 6 years about, in Louisiana. We lived in Shreveport, Louisiana. And all of our relatives were in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is a very long car ride. And back in the day, you didn't have movies that, where you could watch and be entertained and be like, oh, the biggest fight was oh, I want to watch Toy Story now, or I want to watch this. Those movies didn't even exist. And the way of projecting that in the car didn't exist. It was unheard of technology. And so what we had to do was basically sit there and wrestle and do whatever. But the good thing was that there were no like seatbelt rules for the back seat back then, so it was just like free game. You could do whatever you wanted. So we would like pile all over each other and just be stupid, and that's because you're brothers and that's what you do. And because I was the younger brother, I was always weaker and smaller and not the massive masculine man you see in front of you today. And so because of that, I always had to like find new ways to fight back, and so I would fight dirty. And usually as the younger sibling, and who's the younger sibling in here? Usually what that means is that you tap, right? You go, oh, hey mom, John, and so we were doing this, and John, does something, and I'm sure I started crying. I was like, oh, John hit me in the throat, blah, blah, blah. We're in the backseat of a Pontiac J2000, which is a very small vehicle. Very, very small vehicle. And we're just, Dad's mad because we're like 10 hours into a 20-hour drive. He's like, everybody shut up, And we're like, oh, we're ruining the family. And so suddenly we get over here, and so I'm in my seat, and John's in his seat. I'm still kind of crying out like this. And so, but then there's like this rift between us, because I got him in trouble, and I'm still kind of mad at him. And there's this rift between us, this uncomfortableness, because, well, our relationship that was good, 5 minutes before, is now suddenly uncomfortable. And so I'm like, my general way of trying to like mend that relationship was to do something stupid, like, hey, look how goofy I am. And then you'd be like, and then we'd be fine again. But then for like those 5 minutes, it was like, it kind of ate at you, and you're like, oh, I lost my brother. We're not friends anymore, right? But the longer that goes, the longer the relationship is strained, the easier it gets, the more comfortable you get in that. And so we were born into a broken relationship with God. We have never had a truly right, perfect relationship with God. And because of that, that seems normal. That seems just fine because, well, we don't know any different. We don't know what it's like to perfectly commune with God and to have that right relationship. And so it seems normal because we're used to it. We're comfortable with it. And so when God promises us something more, we're like, I don't even know what that means. It doesn't fit within our mindset. The longer it lasts, the more comfortable it becomes. And so, as we think about that, let's continue on and looking at our story. When we last left our story, God has created everything. And everything has been created in order to glorify God. Everything that exists on the face of the planet is collectively praising God with its very existence. Every action that was taken was an action to glorify God. And we're the image. We're made in the image of God, and that word, the Greek word, is icon, E-I-K-O-N. And it's kind of a unique word because, well, we use it we get our word image from it. We also get the term icon, like, on a computer, the thing you click on. And I like to think of an icon as like something much smaller that represents something much greater. Something small that represents something much greater. And if we're made in the image as icons of God, then we're really just a small thing that represents God. We represent something much greater. We represent the creator of the universe and how he created everything that exists. And we're this small representation of it. And so we're made to relate to God in perfect harmony, relate in love to God, and relate in love to ourselves, and relate in love to others. But the fall cracks all of that. Because it cracks the icon, it cracks this image that we have in every direction. It messes it up because now, after the fall, not only are we out of right relationship with God, we no longer have a right view of ourselves, and we no longer have a right view of others because it messes it up in every direction. I don't know if you've ever thought about like how simple actions, simple things you do can, impact multiple relationships. There's probably very few people that would sit here and be like, well, I don't mind Hitler. He wasn't that bad. He never did anything to me. Really, I can't really say he's that bad of a guy because, he didn't do anything to me. I'm sure he's nice. And so we discount everything else. No, nobody does that. Everybody's like, Hitler was a jerk. He killed 6 million people, 6 to 12 million people, depending on who's counting. But dead people don't talk. So he killed a lot of people, and not many people are going to be like, yeah, he really wasn't that bad. I think he was just kind of misunderstood. No, he was a jerk. He was this megalomaniacal guy. That means he wants to take over the world. Big fancy word, megalomaniac. Anyway, megalomaniacal guy that said, I'm going to rule the world. And that's all he wanted to do. And so he took off everything, right? And so if I were to do something individually to one of you, it would impact everyone. You know, if I had a gun, and I took out a gun, and I said, hey guys, look at my fancy gun. You guys would be like, well, that's kind of weird. A guy's a gun, that's strange. And I don't have a gun, by the way. Nobody needs to run. But I took out my gun, and I shot Danielle Swanson in the abdomen. And she takes a bullet, GSW, means gunshot wound if you're ever reading medical records. She takes GSW to the abdomen, she starts bleeding profusely. The cops come in, they arrest me, they take me away, and then, you know, the ambulance shows up, and they take DS away, and she's like, oh, you know, and you guys went home, you wouldn't, you know, and mom and dad are talking to you, hey, how was church tonight? You wouldn't be like, oh, it was good, it was great, yeah, Josh was there, he talked, Van was good, yeah, it was great. Oh, Danielle got shot, but it didn't happen to me, so it was okay. It was good, you know, so I can't really complain. There was a little bit of blood on the carpet, but it wasn't where I was sitting, so it's all okay. Right? It would impact everything. You'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody would bum rush me on this. I would hope somebody would bum rush me on the stage and take me out. And then, you know, I would be taken away to jail. Instantly, I would lose my job. Like, I don't even know if they would bother calling me to tell me I was fired. I think they would just stop writing me checks, would be my guess. It would be a big deal. Not only that, it would impact the church completely, because it's not a small story when somebody gets shot at church, right? So if that were to happen, the church would be all over the news. There would be like news cameras out here, and some of you would be interviewed, and you would have to be like, you know, he's climbing our windows, climbing our windows. It would be like that kind of stuff. You'd be like, I can't believe it. This kind of stuff is happening. It's scary. And you would be on TV. And then not only that, my wife would be mad at me because I would be in jail. And it's tough to earn a paycheck when you're in jail. And then beyond that, my kids would be like, they would write me, you know, like the sad little notes that have pictures of daddy, you know, and daddy's like behind bars, and the rest of the family's happy eating a meal. They're like, miss you, daddy. I'm like, oh, this is weird, you know? And so all this weird stuff, it would break every single relationship I have, even though the only person that I did anything to was Danielle. Even though that was the only person I did something to, it would impact every relationship in every way. And the fall is the exact same way. Even though the only person that was disobeyed was God, it impacted every relationship that exists. Every relationship throughout time has been impacted because of the fall. Because this icon, this image that we were created in, we chose to be disobedient. In Genesis chapter 3, we see the story of the fall that was illustrated in that video as they talk through it. And we're going to look at the first 5 verses of that story. This is Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Genesis 3, verses 1 through 5. I'm reading from the English Standard Version, ESV. It says, now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Adam and Eve are hanging out in the garden. They literally have one rule. They only have one rule. The only thing that they can't do is eat from this one tree. They can do anything else that their imaginations can think of. They can try to build a giant catapult and fling poo over the, I don't know. They can try to do whatever they want, right? But the one rule is, we're not going to eat of that tree. Yes, I can't eat anything from that tree. That's the only thing that I'm disallowed from. And so they're looking at this, and they begin to hang out. And the tree is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so you can guess what it gives. When you eat it, it gives knowledge of good and evil. And so Satan comes up, and he doesn't lie. That's what I think is interesting about this story. You look at what Satan says. He starts with a rumor. He says, did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? Did God actually say that? Because, I heard a rumor that he did. Oh, he didn't? Okay.